Fresh and Buds.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Fresh and Buds. I'm your host, Tommy Fresh, and you are all my buds. It is episode 69, very nice, and we are joined by a very nice member of the community and amazing player, Mr. Josh Lau. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Just wrapped up recording a little video for the Card Guys YouTube channel. That should be up in a few days. But other than that, pretty chill day today.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you chose to join us and give us your time, and this will be up in a few days from when we're recording, so it might just time up perfectly. So
There
we'll
you
see
go. Yeah.
with the videos, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well coming up. But before we get to that, I do want to shout out to the Patreon, which you can find in the show notes, where you can kind of get some bonus perks, help keep the mics hot, the lights on for me doing this podcast and all that, and it gives you access to a Patreon exclusive Discord channel in the Buzz Discord, which is the Buzz Discord is welcome for everyone, but it is cool. You get some bonus eps on there as well, and we are back to, and this will be out Thursday, but last night, Wednesday, the Bud Rush Bellow returned after a week hiatus because Gary was, doing some schoolwork, but we are back, and we had a lot of fun last night. At least I am assuming so. And we definitely talked a lot about Outsiders, which is the new Flesh and Blood set coming in March, and we are very excited about it. We know very little about it other than where it's happening. So, but let's get to the episode. We're going to talk a lot about Warriors today, but I also want to talk about Josh, right? Josh, I want to get to know a little bit about you, the man behind the sword,
Sure.
or the saber, or dagger, or axes.
But not really axes, but yes.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about the axes.
Yeah, sure.
I have such a soft spot. But when did Flesh and Blood come into your life, and were TCGs in your life prior to that?
Well, let's see. So I guess I started playing in the very, very tail end of 2020. So this was during, all the lockdowns and all that. And actually at that time, I was actually living in another country. I was living in Hong Kong. And there was a package deal on Channel Fireball for like Flesh and Blood. I was a MTG player for 3-4 years at that point, and I was like, all right, they're advertising this. What is this? Okay, sure. It looks kind of cool. Let's just buy it was like a starter kit or something like that. And so the starter kit had, the Ira welcome decks. It had a letter from James White, actually, and a box of WTR, and two of those classic playmats. And I played a couple games, and opened up the box at the LGS, got some more people into it, and a lot of people just started getting hype about it in Hong Kong. And I think my very first armory was at the very, very beginning of 2021. So this was during the Crucible of War era. This is before they had Crew Unlimited. So, all the staples from Crew were expensive at that point. I remember like Spoils of War, Courage of Blade Holds were very, very expensive. But yeah, that's basically about the time 2021, early 2021. And I played in Hong Kong for 6 months from, January to June. And I was actually the first person in Hong Kong to reach 1,000 experience points because I was quite the grinder. I was, one of the unique things about Hong Kong is that you can play like literally 9 armories if you want to, 9-10 armories a week if you want to, right?
Wow.
You could hit like 5 on the weekdays easily, and then 2 or maybe even 3 on the weekends each day, right? So that was quite the grind back then. And then there were online skirmishes, so I was just playing all the time back then. And you know, in July, I moved from Hong Kong to the US, and went to a few RTNs here, and went to a few skirmishes around here. Got to meet the other guys on the Card Guys team, and after kicking their butts a few times, they were like, "Hey, Josh, we're tired of working against you. Why don't you why don't you come join our team?" And the rest is history there. So yeah, that's kind of how things were. I'm very, very fond of the Crucible War days. Those are the simpler times when the game was the game is still very, very interactive now, but like back then it was like I talk about this a little bit in the video I just recorded, but like Dorinthia versus Bravo, Dorinthia versus Dash were some of the most interesting back and forth interactive matchups you could ask for. So yeah, that's a brief history of the background. Basically, early 2021. That's when I got started.
Yeah, I will say you're not the first person I've talked to that reminisces on the Crucible War days and the the slow grindiness and like the really interesting decisions. And I think I mean, personally, I think we've come a long way. It got pretty fast there for a minute, but I think hopefully we're kind of getting there back to some very interactive and interesting gameplay. But
they've reeled it back. Yeah, it's definitely
definitely.
come back a bit. Which there was a video recently. It was like Flesh and Blood has no controversies, and this sucks. I'm like, well, that's actually a good thing.
Yeah, I think that was Sloop Dupe.
Yeah, that was a very, very funny video. I was like, it's like, content creators are so screwed because they have nothing to talk about. I'm like, well,
yes and no.
Yeah, yes and no. I can still pump out videos on the YouTube page, even if the game's not on fire, right? So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very grateful, and I'm sure most of us are. But I do want to know, or I want to get a little bit of background on what tell us a little bit about the Card Guys and what's going on over there on that YouTube channel.
Sure. So the Card Guys YouTube channel is a place where you can find, I guess we're more competitively focused. We have deck guides, we have deck techs, we have a lot of tier list videos and chart videos. Some guys, call us the chart guys, not the card guys, the chart guys. And we have gameplay with commentary. Recently, we my teammate Nathan and I we got to commentate the Hong Kong Battle Hardened, so that was very interesting. That happened, I think it was Thanksgiving weekend. So I have a lot of connections in Hong Kong, so I was like, "Hey, can you get us the VODs and we'll voice them over?" So if you want to watch some high level gameplay with commentary, Card Guys YouTube page is a good place to go. And I also have a YouTube series there called Fab 201, where I kind of go over like more advanced topics, not for like complete beginners. We got a bunch of if you love Fab, you're gonna love that channel. You'll find something that you like there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, and a good variety is always nice for the viewers out there. Which obviously I'll be including all the links in there, though I'm sure many of the listeners have heard of the Card Guys, and hopefully they're coming from there to hear.
There you go.
But you mentioned that you kind of really grinded, right? In Hong Kong, and then came over back to the States and hit the ground running with some RTNs, beat up your fellow card guys, and when did it first click for you that you wanted to be part of the competitive space in Flesh and Blood?
Well, it was really the game. So there were certain like light bulb moments for me that made me really fall in love with this game. The first is that I noticed at the armories in like January and February that the same people were doing very, very well. And that was something that was not possible in the. I played MTG prior to that. I just did not see the same consistency that I saw in Flesh and Blood. Right, the people that there's so many decisions that you make in Flesh and Blood that a better player is going to win a majority of the games, because all it takes is a couple mistakes and then a really strong player can capitalize on those. The other thing that I really, really like about Flesh and Blood is that it's very, very, very interactive. This is why I kind of reminisce about the Crucible War days, because Dorinthia versus Bravo was probably the most interactive back and forth game that you can have, that utilized like mid game, early game, mid game, late game, ultra late game. Like there were different phases to the game. Every single turn there was back and forth, and it was just really, really a blast to play. So those two things, like the consistency that you could achieve, as well as the interactivity or the agency that you had over the game, were three things that really, really, really drew me to the game. And that's when I was like, this is like the perfect competitive outlet for me. Like when I was younger, I'm in my 30s now. When I was in my 20s, I used to play StarCraft 2 professionally. So I have always had that competitive itch. So coming into my 30s, I can't play computer games anymore like the kids. So I still want to compete and have fun, right? And Flesh and Blood was basically the perfect game for me. Like I was going to a few of, like, it took me a while to get kind of in the competitive side of MTG, and I went to a couple Grand Prix, like one in Taipei, one in Bangkok, and then everything shut down in the world, and then I found Flesh and Blood, and it's just really the love of the game has fueled my competitive spirit, and I think a lot of people, it's a similar case.
Yeah, I truly believe you're right there, that that is what kind of draws people to the competitive side of this game. And I mean, I can't echo your statements enough. And and you do mention that the better player typically wins the games, and you certainly beat me at that armory in Columbus.
That was a funny game. Yeah, you were playing Levia. I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I like to play Levia as a excuse for my losses.
Hey, Levia, I'll let the listeners in on a little secret here. So I was actually on camera at Worlds, but they didn't broadcast my game. Like, we were the backup match, right? So if the feature match finished early, they would switch to the backup match. And thank God they didn't switch to the backup match, because I got my ass kicked by Levia really badly, like 17-0 badly. Okay, like,
oh my God.
So I'm very glad that that has gone to the Shadow Realms, got banished.
Well, hey, we're gonna have to reach out to Channel Fireball.
Please don't do that. That was a rough one.
Oh man, and that, yeah. I mean, she gets her wins here and there, but
for sure.
Now you clearly have an affinity for the warrior class, right? Where did this start?
Well, there is a guy in Hong Kong. His name is Mortal, and so back then I was playing Ira. When I started the game, like really, really early, like in January 2021, I was playing Ira, and he was playing Dorinthia, and he kicked my ass really badly many times. And I was like, all right, I'm sick of losing to this Mortal guy. I'm gonna go figure out how that deck works, and then I'm gonna learn how to counter it, and then I'll win, right? And so I picked up Dorinthia to learn it, to eventually go back to Ira to beat it, and I never went back to Ira. So I was like, Dorinthia is really, really fun. There's a lot of different plays that you can make, and just the whole attack reaction thing is really, really great. I like answering when people are like, how much is this for? I'm like, it's 6 for now, or 6 at the moment, or
currently
6. Yeah. So That's just something I really enjoy. And when Monarch came out, I was like, well, there's a new warrior. Let me try him out. Let me see how it goes. And I also enjoyed Bolton as well. So this is something I like to tell people is that like the unifying theme around warrior is not weapons. Warrior is not a weapon class, although Dorinthia is very weapon focused, right? Actually, spoiler alert: rune blades have more weapons than warriors. So if there's a weapon class, it's actually rune blade. That might not be true with the release of Dynasty, so that might not be true anymore. But in the past, that was definitely true. But my main point here is that the unifying theme among warriors, this includes Kasai as well, is that they put you in tough situations. They put you in damned if you do, damned if you don't situations. So Dorinthia says, "You're going to block this? No, I get a +1 counter. You do block it, I have reprise." Bolton says, "Are you going to block this? No? All right, there's an on hit on this, and I'll draw a card or go to soul or whatever. If you do, it gets bumped up by 1, and I could give it go again." Kasai says, "You going to block my saber? No? All right, I'm going to get some copper, and then you're going to have a big problem when I have 5 or 6 of them. You do want to block it? Okay, my saber gets stronger, I have reprise." So the unifying theme among warriors is that they put their opponents into tough spots. And I mean, that's interactive in my mind. I like to do that. Not that I'm like a mean guy or anything like that, but I was like, I want my opponent to have to think a bit, right? And that just creates a better game when there's a back and forth. And all the warriors create some back and forth, which I really love.
Yeah, in a way, you kind of challenge your opponent, right? You're just like, you're gonna have to really outplay me, right? You're gonna have to read me. You're gonna have to read these plays because I'm going to present you with the hardest decisions. And
exactly,
which is awesome.
And they can only no block for so long, right? It's like, all right, fine. It's 5 turns of no blocking. Now we're at the late game. Okay, now what are you gonna do? You're gonna keep no blocking? You're gonna die. So even for those that don't want to engage with the warriors, eventually they have to engage with the warriors, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Now, have you ever really danced or messed around with some other classes and heroes? I know you mentioned Ira, or are there any that might like tempt you to kind of like give a whirl?
Sure. There's 2 classes in particular that I like. So the first class was the very first class I learned, which was Ninja. I enjoyed drafting Ketsu in the very, very early days. And I enjoy the play style of Ninja, but every single time I try to play it, I feel like I have no natural talent for that class, even though I really enjoy that class. The other hero that I have quite a bit of an affinity for is Mechanologist. So that includes Datadol and Dash. If you go to the Fab TCG website and punch my name into the deck list, you're going to see that I have some Dash deck lists published. So, I took Dash to some skirmishes, and I enjoyed Dash as well. I think Dash is really quite fun to play. And, there's so many ways to build Dash, especially now with the release of Dynasty. There's so many ways that you can play Dash. And yeah, those 2 heroes really stuck out to me. I was definitely on the razor reflex side of WTR rather than the pummel side of WTR.
Okay, yeah, I mean that makes sense from our conversation so far. I love Warrior. Warrior's probably my second favorite class. My first favorite class is, as you might have guessed, is Brute. Any chance we see you sleeve up Levia anytime soon, Josh?
I think I have one semi-official match. That was there was a team league match last season where I was playing against my brother, Michael Lau. And my brother is he played Prism back then, right? And so I was like, well, Dory and Bolton really suck against Prism. So you know what? I'm going to register Levia against my brother. You can go watch that if you want to laugh, have a little bit of a laugh. But there is an official game from me playing Levi against my brother on YouTube.
Oh man,
Yep.
well, we're gonna have to check that one out later.
Uh-oh.
Now here comes a segment of the show that I like to call the Fresh Faves. We're gonna ask you a few of your favorite things in the game, favorite cards,
Sure.
and hopefully you give me an answer. If
you
you're
go.
ready for that, Josh.
All right.
First, who is your favorite hero?
Can I pick two, or do I have to pick one?
The rules are pretty loose.
Okay.
Yeah, you can pick one.
Pick
If
one.
you want to
Okay.
say two.
My first hero that I fell in love with was Dorinthia.
Okay. That's a great answer. And totally. What was the second one?
Bolton.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought so.
I mean, it's just, is it most recent or is it first love, right? You know, so.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
Yeah, one's puppy love, one's
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite weapon?
I would say my favorite weapon is actually the Centauri Sabers. Mainly because it can be played in all three of the heroes.
Yeah.
Yep.
What is your favorite equipment?
By far that has to be Courage of Bladehold. That is the card that if I just sit and watch a little bit, I could actually tell a lot about the warrior player based on how they use their Courage of Bladehold. That is the most important piece of equipment for many of the decks, and I mean it looks amazing, and the whole flavor of warrior, valor, courage, dauntless, you know, these are all great adjectives, right?
Yeah. That's a great answer. And what is your favorite, like, run-of-the-mill card, your attack actions, reactions, non-attack actions?
By far, my favorite card is Route.
Oh, yeah.
That is the GOAT card there. That card has killed many, 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 many people. And people complain about it, but I'm like, come on, Warrior doesn't get that many overpowered things, you know. We gotta give us a bone once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you're not jamming. I mean, some people might jam all three copies, but you know, it's in there to like close out a game. That's a great answer. Route is awesome.
Yep.
Though I think a close one for me in the Warrior class is Steelblade Shunt because I like the element of
that
surprise
was good
as well.
Yeah. Ting ting ting. There you
go. Now let's get to the main topic here, Josh.
Sure.
Thought it'd be fun to take a look at the warriors we currently have to play with. You know, we've already talked about them a little bit, but let's take a little bit more of a dive. But before we do that, how has Dynasty supplemented, as a supplemental set, the class as a whole? Starting off with Spirit of Arena, which, you know, I mentioned before the show, and if for anybody who hasn't checked out, I guess it was Uber's video, but Josh did an amazing explanation of how Spirit of Arena kind of really changed the game for Bolton. You should check it out. But how, you know, as the dust has settled a little bit, do you think that Spirit of Arena has supplemented the warrior class?
Okay. Well, Spirit of Arena can only be played in Bolton because even though Spirit of Arena is not a specialization, actually,
no,
is
it's
it a
not. No, I think
the Lumina Ascension is a specialization, so you indirectly it basically is, right? So the Lumina Ascension used to be a really, really clunky card with Via the Vanguard. Spirit of Arena helps with that. The combo speed is actually increased with, if you ever get Spirit of Arena out on an early turn, you actually can combo with one fewer soul than normal. And in the Raiden style, Spirit of Arena allows you to flash in Lumina to gain your action point back, which is really nice. All in all, it's a really, really great card for the deck, but the downside is it's a one-of.
Yeah.
So, I mean, half of games, you're never going to see it. So there's that. And then half, like a certain portion of the game, you're going to have to pitch it to like Soul Shield or something like that. So it's a great card, but it's only a one-of, so it's a little bit of a a sad face, sad time. Although if it was like a unlimited amount, I don't even know if you would run. You'd probably run 2, but you probably wouldn't run 3, right? So I think LSS in general doesn't want to create like legendaries that are multiple ofs that go in your deck, right? If you look at all the legendaries, they're equipment, so one ofs, or they're things like Eclipse, Doomsday, or Surya for Prism, right? So they're limited to 1, right? So they print it at a higher rarity, but you only need 1. Okay, you can bite the bullet there, right? So, overall, I think that's the situation for Spirit of Arena. Good card, only have 1 of, so it's not influential on all games.
Next is a new weapon, which I guess there was 2 new weapons. You mentioned that Runeblade had more weapons, so 2 new weapons for Warrior and Dynasty, 1 new weapon for Runeblade. So it might be even at this point, but we don't know. Quicksilver Dagger,
yes,
which is a card I enjoy. But how have you viewed this card so far?
This card enables a new archetype, which is a common theme among supplemental sets for warriors as they keep building the class out. But they don't build the class deep, which is kind of the issue, right? The easiest example I can give people is Everfest. What did Runeblade get? Runeblade got Swarming Gloomveil. Auto 3 of in all the Runeblade decks. What did Warrior get? We got Shatter. A 1 of in a particular deck, only goes in Dorinthia, only goes in Dawnblade Dorinthia, only as a 1 of. Right? So the fact that this is something I wish LSS would address eventually. I guess eventually they will. You can't keep building a class out. Eventually you have to build them down and deep, right? So this dagger is the continuation of this. So this enables you to play the Centauri Saber plus the Quicksilver Dagger. So generally how you would do this is you'd attack with this Saber, give it go again with Blade Runner or Glint or Run Through, or give it pre-go again with Hit and Run or Warrior's Valor or whatever. Spoils of War. Then if that hits, wonderful. Your hero ability triggers on that. Then you would come in with the dagger. And then with the go again from the dagger, you would finish with the saber, right? So that's one way to do that. If they block the saber, then your dagger would go. If they don't block the dagger, then your hero ability triggers on the dagger, then you can hit with the dagger. This is a lot of hoops to jump through for not amazing damage. The issue with this is that your damage output is not that high, and the type of hands that you need to have a good turn. So like, let's talk about like the best turn that you could possibly have as a consistent best turn that you could have as Dorinthia playing the style is you swing at the Saber, Red Blade Runner, Quicksilver Dagger. So this is already 3 resources. And then Snatch. That is the highest of high rolls that you could do with this deck. So what did you do? You dealt 2 damage with the Saber. You dealt 4 damage with the Dagger. That's 6. You dealt 4 damage with the Snatch. That's 10. You took your counter off of Valiant Dynamo. That's 11. So you got 11 value with 3 cards. A lot of decks could do that. Really easily, right? You could argue, oh, you got more than 11 value because if Snatch hit, that's like an extra 3 value. Sure. Dorinthia, though, is not one of those decks that just want to randomly rip cards off the top, right? Snatch is very good in Briar because no matter what you get, like 50 out of their 60 cards is a good arsenal target, right? Whereas with this style of deck, like 20 out of your deck is like a good arsenal target. Like you don't want to arsenal like a blue Warrior's Valor or something like there's a lot of like things that you don't want to put in your arsenal, right? So this whole mechanic with the dagger is cute, possibly decent in the right situation. This is very similar to like the hatchets or the Centauri double Centauri Sabers for Dory. There's a very specific metagame where that's actually good. And that there was like a very specific time when Starvo was running around where the dual wielding Dorinthia build was actually pretty good, because you look at it like which deck actually could run the most D-Reacts. It's actually Bolton, because
Yeah.
Bolton has Soul Shield, Steel Blade Shunt, Unmovable, Sink Below, Fate Foreseen, right? If you wanted to build a very defensive deck, that's how you do it, right? And the yeah. So, anyways, that's kind of my whole spiel on the dagger. I think it's cute. Probably needs a little bit more support. I think it's actually pretty fun though, because it's completely different style than Dawnblade, and this this indirectly this existing helps the Dawnblade a bit, because you don't know what style you're going to face, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
just like with Dash, like you don't know whether they're going to play Mech Dash, Control Dash, Boost Dash. That indirectly helps them, right? So if now there's like 4 ways to play Dorinthia, even though one of them is clearly much better than the others, there's still a little bit of a boost, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, Josh, I haven't played the Dagger Saber Dory deck, but I've been
Mhm.
playing a lot of Dagger Saber Bolton. And
I
I
had never even thought of that, but okay. Huh.
I've enjoyed it because you get to run things like Luminate, like at the end of those little like poke, and here's like a nice little on hit that you got to worry
That
about.
is
It's a
true.
lot of fun, and things like hit and run really good in that deck.
Mhm.
But I don't know if it's necessarily competitive, but like you said,
Mhm.
cute and fun. Um, Next card, Iron Song Pride.
Mm.
How is that supplemented, or at least Dory in a way?
This is a great card to have. So just in general, as Dorinthia, you wanted to go second. Now you have the ability to start with tempo and start with a +1 counter. That's really, 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 really good. The 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 interesting thing about Iron Song Pride is that it's useful against a wide variety of opponents. Um, and there's also some like neat tricks you can do with this. Like, shout out to NXI, who is an avid Dorinthia player. He taught me this trick. He said, um, let's say you're playing against a Bravo or a Oldhim, a Guardian, whatever. So they're playing more defensively, right? So you swing your weapon in for, let's just say you're swinging it naked for 3, right? And then they
Mhm.
block 3, or and then you pump it to 6. And if they may not actually de-react at that time, right?
Mhm.
Because your weapon doesn't have go again, right? So what you can do is say, they'll ask, do you have any more reactions? And be like, no, I have no more reactions. And they're like, okay, I take 3, right? Because there's no go again. They're like, I'll save this D-react for something more important, right? And then after you deal your 3 damage to them, you say, all right, now I'm going to play Iron Song Pride, put a +1 counter on it. Your turn.
Oh, I
Right?
love that.
So imagine you played the Iron Song Pride. Oh, they would sink below that every day of the week, right? Because you would be at
Yeah.
+4, right? And they
Yeah.
would deny that counter, right? You'd be like, all right, fine, take 3. After damage, put the counter.
Oh,
Very,
that's
very,
awesome.
very, very clever thing that you could do with this card. And just in general, this card, getting the first counter against certain decks is quite difficult, but it's actually backbreaking once you get it.
Mhm.
Example, Icelander and Oldhim. Very, very difficult to get a counter on your weapon.
Yeah.
But if you can actually get a counter on your weapon, now they have to give you reprise, basically, to take the counter off of the weapon, which allows you to make a play, right? So Iron Song
Yeah.
Pride, very, very good card. Probably a 2 of if you go first, a 3 of if you go second, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I think the card is awesome, and it's one of those cards that kind of excited to see as the warrior class goes deeper how
Mm-hmm.
you can use that card, because or even as we get
Mm-hmm.
more weapons, or I guess it's swords only, but more
Yep.
swords. But and then something else you know that we got from Dynasty is the piercing mechanic,
Mm-hmm.
which you see in like precision press and puncture.
Yep.
How do you think that has affected Warrior?
Puncture Red is one of the standout cards of the set. This is a card that... So one of the biggest problems with going Singing Steelblade into a 3 pump is that you get blown out by a 4 block. Sink Below, Fate Foreseen, right? But now if they block with armor and you go Singing Steelblade into Puncture, you're now at +5, which is really, really important. This is actually why I liked cards like Biting Blade. I still love Biting Blade a lot. It's because Singing Steelblade into Biting Blade is +5. Going +3, +4, you get blown out. You go to +5, very few heroes can deal with you going to +5. And this is also a very, very good card against Oldhim. Basically negates his shield. And just in general, this is a upgrade to Razor Reflex because it blocks for 3. It loses a little bit of that utility. You could, Razor Reflex a Snatch or something, or a Flock, but I would definitely prefer to have the 3 block Puncture. Is it a 3 of in most decks? I would say no. I would say you probably want 2, because if you think realistically, how often is your third one going to be +4?
Yeah,
probably only against Oldhim, realistically, right? Or against a Guardian or another Dorinthia, right? So I think in general you're probably going to run 2. You run 3, I don't think I wouldn't complain at all either. I think that's fine. As for Precision Press, that is the only way I would play that is with as a blue. Kind of an expensive hit and run. It's probably good enough to be in the energy base of Dorinthia decks. Is it on the level of Glint the Quicksilver? No, but it's probably better than like Blue Warriors Valor, for example.
Yeah, and I mean, piercing's interesting. Kind of, I think we had, like, a lot of people had talked about we might get something like this, and then we did. I thought it might have applied to a little bit more than just Warrior, but I'm glad that Warrior is the only one to get it, and I'm excited to see how they kind of expand on that as we get more Warrior stuff. Now, let's get to the Warriors, the actual Warriors that we play with. So I wanted to start a little bit, just talking a little bit about Kasai, because we've talked a decent amount about Dory and Bolton. Kasai, while from Crew did not gain competitive popularity really until EVR, when Blood on Her Hands was released, which is her specialization, kind of like the big payoff for all those coppers. Sure, we had cash in, stuff like that, but Blood on Her Hands was the card. What are your feelings on Kasai and the Blitz meta, or just in general? Because at first it felt like people were pretty high. We're like, wow, this Blood on Her Hands is like, this is a crazy pop off turn, and then the meta kind of settled, and she was kind of like bait A tier, I guess.
So Kasai has actually had a very interesting roller coaster ride. She, like you said, she used to be in kind of a valley, then a peak, and now it's kind of a little bit on the downturn here. So let's talk about why that was the case. So Kasai in the past had to deal with a metagame that consisted of 3 heroes: Dorinthia, Kano, Ira. Kasai struggles a lot against Dorinthia because you never get buffs on your sabers. Blade Runner didn't exist at that time, and Dorinthia was just Valiant Dynamos didn't exist at that time as well. So like this was very, very difficult for Kasai. Against Kano, most Kasai decks were running about 10 blues. They still run about 10 blues now, and 10 blues was not going to cut it against Kano. And the Kasai deck was very, very slow compared to Dorinthia, slow compared to Ira. It gave Kano way too much time to set up, way too easy for Kano to just blow Kasai up back then. Ira basically was a better version of Kasai in every single way, a way more consistent. And even though, Ira's cards would turn on Kasai's sabers, there was no payoff except cash in, right? So the value of Ira was just out of control, right? Of course, all those things got fixed with the release of Valiant Dynamo's Blood on Her Hands, Blade Runner. But the issue now is that you look at the top tier blitz decks: Chain, Prism, Icelander, Reinhardt. She has problems against all four of those. Is she good? She's good. But is she a great pick for a competitive event? No, she's not. So let's run through those four matchups, why she struggles against them. First of all, Chain. The only way that Kasai could beat Chain is if they try to fatigue them, and I don't know if that's really possible. Against a good Chain, I don't think you're going to quite get there. Against Prism, you have no poppers in your deck except possibly Nourishing Emptiness, possibly Command and Conquer, depending on your build. But I mean, if Prism can throw these giant attacks at you every single turn, you're going to have trouble. Not only that, to deal with a Spectra Aura, you often have to give up 5 to 6 damage, because of the way the Blade Runner works, right? Next hero, Icelander. This not only can Icelander disrupt you with things like CLF, which basically means you can't get your 2 hits in, but just having just the same problem as Kano. You have a low blue count, you're going to have a lot of trouble as Kasai. You oftentimes, if you get taxed by 1, you're okay, but if you get taxed by 2, you can't do much as Kasai. And finally, Reinhardt, you're just not fast enough. Like, Reinhardt got so many new tools. Reinhardt's very, very quick. And oftentimes, Kasai wants to block with 2 cards, play 2 cards, block with 2 cards, play 2 cards. Well, guess what? Reinhardt says, no, you're going to block with 1 card and play 3, or you get stuck with the wrong card, etc. Right? So these are all very, very, very bad things for Kasai. Is she strong? She's still fairly strong, but in this current metagame, not where you want to be.
Yeah, it seems to be just in a weak spot, and I wonder what it would take. Maybe a lot of those heroes that fall out of popularity, which is hard for me to fathom right now. But we'll see. And obviously, you can only really, realistically play with the Sabers, so there's no real, I guess, flexibility.
As in Warrior, you have to be very careful with, like, okay, so there's one-handed and two-handed. There's dagger, saber, sword, axe. Okay, so now there's 8 types of things, right? So I guess there's never going to be a two-handed dagger. There's 7 types of things, right? So if they add a shield mechanic to Warrior, I think that's going to be cool, but I'm going to be a little sad, right? I'm like, can we just dig down on our existing archetypes first? Right?
Yeah.
That's what Kasai needs. She needs for them to be like, all right, here's Kasai. We gave her some tools, but we didn't give her enough tools. Let's figure something out for her. She probably needs another specialization. There's not really a card that I would say there's no giant gap in her current playstyle. She just needs another outlet for copper or something that can speed up the copper generation.
Yeah. That's probably it, right? Because the meta can be quick, and you need to
you don't have time to farm 6 gold.
Yeah.
Sorry, 6 copper.
6 copper, yeah. Well, 6 gold would be pretty good.
Yeah, 6 gold would be pretty good. Unfortunately, Blood on Her Hand still says copper, though. So even if you bring 6 gold to the Blood on Her Hands vendor, they're like, sorry, go make change and come back.
Well, next let's talk about the OG warrior, Dorinthia, who you've sung your praises for. She kind of gives us the classic approach to the warrior game plan, kind of play tricks, overwhelm the opponent, give them really tough decisions, and then all of a sudden you're staring down a Dawnblade attack that most likely will kill you with a route in your hand. So she has a couple different archetypes, some better than others. You get the Dawnblade, the sabers, the new dagger, and axes, which which you alluded to not being Huge fan
Well,
of.
axes is
Axe.
okay.
Axe.
Axe
Oh,
is not
axe.
okay.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll talk
Yeah.
about the axe. But how would you rank these archetypes?
Mhm. So clear first place. I assume we're talking about classic constructed here.
Mhm.
Clear first place is Dawnblade. This is her weapon. This is what she will living legend with. This is what if she ever LLs, this is the weapon that's going to be LL'd with her, right?
Mhm.
This is the go look at every single picture of Dorothea. What weapon is she holding? Is she holding a pair of hatchets? She is not.
No.
But uh, not to say that I haven't tried to make these other archetypes work. And like I said, I actually think the dual wield axes in particular was actually a decent metagame choice back in the Starvo meta.
Mhm.
Anyway, so by far number one is the Dawnblade. The second most powerful archetype, in my opinion, is the dual wield axes. There's a decent amount of support for them. They have decent damage output, and if you set up a little bit with a potion and spill blood, you can actually have a pretty good finishing turn. Along with the Valiant Dynamo, pretty good. After that, I would probably rank I would say the sabers and the saber dagger is probably about the same. The
Okay.
main issue with those is that they lack the damage output. The axes just deals 20 to 25% more damage. And it has cards that specifically reference axes like spill blood. So
Mhm.
um, you're basically doing the same thing but with lower damage output, which is not good, right? And then at the very, very, very bottom is the two-handed axe. That is clearly designed for a hero coming up later.
Yeah. Yeah.
None of the current heroes can make any use of that weapon. Yeah,
Have you tried?
Merciless Battle Axe, F tier.
Have you given the old college try yet, Josh?
I have, and it's the resources just don't line up correctly.
Yeah.
You need 3 resources to swing.
Mhm.
You need some way to give it go again, which is probably going to be another card, which means more resources. Then you have to have 3 more resources to attack again.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to have overpower on a weapon
I
once
am
in a while.
interested to see what that hero looks like that's going to wield that big old axe, but I guess
Yep.
we're not.
Maybe it's
We're not.
the warrior from the Spillblood art. You never know.
Oh yeah, I mean he looks awesome in that art.
Yep.
It's like one of my
Yep.
favorites. Now let's talk a little bit about Sir Bolton. And as I may quote Flake, Lumina, go Boomina.
Ah, yes. Lumina go Boomina.
Yeah, Bolton's my second favorite hero all time. Easily goes Leviah Bolton, and something that something that probably goes hand in hand is that they have very almost like downside mechanics. I want to talk about the charge mechanic.
Yep.
You know, it's very inefficient, right? Because you're taking 2 cards, sometimes 3, to do something.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on the argument that it might be the worst mechanic in the game outside of combo?
So this is a very interesting topic in terms of game design, because let's say you design a game and you design a mechanic and it's like, well, if we make the Dawnblade, so ideally we want the Dawnblade to attack for 3.35 or something like that, right? Well, you could either make an attack for 4 or 3. Unfortunately, you can't make an attack for 3.35, right?
Yeah.
Same way with Bolton. They're like, well, should we make his attacks for 4 or 3? Mathematically, it should have been somewhere between 4 and 3, right? But a lot of his attacks ended up at 3. So they rounded down all of his attacks, which, affects his damage output. But the whole charge mechanic actually is, I think, fairly easy to solve, in that when I first saw the Spirit of Arena card, I got very excited because I was like, oh, they're going to print a lot of supplemental cards. So there's probably some extra light warrior cards. And there's probably, based on the wording of Spirit of Arena, there's probably a card that says, when this gets charged, do something, right? And so that made me, unfortunately, I was disappointed, right? But there was no other cards. But that got me thinking, like, why don't all of the Boltyn cards say when this is charged into your soul? So let's take the simple example is Bolt of Courage, right? Bolt of Courage is the red one is a 3-cost charge card. If it hits and you've charged, it lets you draw a card, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why doesn't Bolt of Courage say when Bolt of Courage is charged into your soul, the attack that you played gains draw a card on hit, something like that? Or Engulfing Light, when Engulfing Light gets charged, the attack gains when it hits, charge a card, or go to soul, whatever, right? Take Flight gives it go again. Express Lightning would give it +1 or something like that, right? Something like that would help a lot, even if you have to tweak something else. Like the fact that the cards go in your soul are basically lost unless you play Beacon or Celestial Cataclysm is a very, very sad thing. And that, I think that's one way that in the future they're going to go with. Like, you have to think about, like, now we're looking back, a year later, looking back at Monarch. But let's go back to Monarch. Back then, this was the very first set where they released talents, right? So they I think they tried to play it a little safe. I mean, ultimately, Prism and Chain were not safe, but I think they were like, let's hold back a little bit on our design space because just to play it safe, right? So I think that's what they did. It ended up kind of biting Boltyn in the ass, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, could you? I guess like that's a great point, right? There's a huge dichotomy of power level in Monarch, right? But I guess sure there was, people can play about Chain, people can play about Prism. I know I'm one, but I mean, it's very possible that this game might not have survived if all 4 heroes were out of control for Monarch, right?
Exactly.
It is interesting, and it would be very cool to see more of the text from Spirit of Arena on some future Light Warrior cards. And
I think that's ultimately where they're going to go with the design space, but how they do it, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
It might come as like light cards in general, so this would benefit Prism.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the main thing is, like, if they had more efficient outlets for Soul, then Prism gets too good, right? So now that Prism has LL, they might actually be printing some stuff for Boltyn, printing light cards, but they're actually for Boltyn to try to push him towards LL2, right? So
I mean,
there's that.
The first step was Spirit there. Now, for Boltyn as a hero, right? As a deck that you can play, the 2 standout archetypes are Saber's combo and Raiden, which is my favorite weapon in the game. And you got some other things here and there that we already mentioned, but can you give us kind of like just a little bit of a picture of how you view both those archetypes?
Well, the beautiful thing about the Sabers combo and Raiden is that they actually share like 45 to 50 cards among them. So actually you can switch between them based on your opponent's hero, right? So the Sabers combo, this is generally against decks that have low disruption or decks that if you combo off, you will heal so much and have so much tempo that you can win the game indirectly, right? Whereas the Raiden, this is more for matchups where that's not possible. In particular, this is you have to play Raiden against Icelander because of the existence of a single card, Hypothermia. The Raiden is kind of your backup plan in general. Like, I would say if you're playing Boltyn, you're actually, most of your matches are going to be with the Sabers, but you still have to be competent with the Raiden in order to play the hero as a whole. I don't think you can be a pure Raiden player or a pure Sabers player and take Boltyn to a day 2 or a high placing finish. That's actually one of the reasons why he's one of the hardest heroes in the game to learn, is because you have to understand 2 wildly different strategies, and you have to understand the threats of every single deck in the format to play him properly.
Yeah, and it is interesting too, because I mean, just to even step back when you're talking about, well, every picture we see of Dorinthia,
Mhm.
Dawnblade, and this is the card that will
That's
go
true.
LL with
Yep.
Dorinthia, and you look at Bolton, Raiden is his
Yeah, that's
signature
his
weapon.
signature weapon. Yes. Yep.
And
Yep.
it makes you wonder
Mhm.
if we're gonna get some more Raiden support, though. I'm sure, not exactly sure how that would
Mhm.
pan out, but God, I love that card so much. I love attacking for
Yeah.
zero.
The easiest way to support that is to give an attack reaction that charges.
Yeah.
I am actually very surprised there was not an attack reaction that charged. Um, so, for example, you send your Bolt of Courage at them, no charge, but you have cards in your hand. Now they're like, dang it, he has that, whatever, insert card name here, card.
Yeah.
You give it +3, charge a card. Now your Raiden is active. The Bolt of Courage is active. Um, I think that could have been really, really easily resolved. It's just the Courageous Steel Hand should have read uh, target. Uh, so, as an additional cost to play Courageous Steel Hand, you may charge a card. Target weapon gets +3 if you've charged this turn. Just
Would have been.
that simple thing already changes everything about that hero. Suddenly, you're probably playing 6 of Courageous Steel Hand, right?
Oh yeah.
It's really, really interesting to do it that way. Yep.
Yeah, and yeah, I hope we get something like that at some point.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a lot of like low hanging fruit in terms of Bolton design.
yeah,
Somebody at LSS is gonna hit that out of the park eventually.
I hope so. I hope you're right.
Yep.
But we have some listener questions before we do. We have the
Sure.
third ProQuest season coming
Hmm.
up in January. Do you have any like quick thoughts on Bolton and Dory going into that competitive
Sure.
season?
So one of the issues I'm foreseeing as a Bolton is that Dash actually went from a very favorable to a slightly unfavorable matchup
Mhm.
by the printing of a single card, Pulse Wave Harpoon.
Mm.
Um, in the past, Dash had no interaction with your deck at all. A average amount of armor, and their whole deck was basically attack actions, which meant Bolton cut through Dash so easily in the past. Dash just did not have the speed to deal with Bolton, did not have any interaction with Bolton. So that was actually like at least a 70-30 matchup in Bolton's favor. But now with Pulse Wave Harpoon, they can sit on that in Arsenal, play out their turns normally. When the Bolton player starts to indicate that they're not going to block, in comes the Pulse Wave Harpoon. They're going to rip your combo piece out. And you took a lot of damage for the chance at comboing. And then, they rip a card out of your hand so you can't combo. I foresee that being very, very problematic. Now, whether or not the Dash players are going to be smart enough to realize that, well, if they were listening to this podcast, that means they're Warrior Dash fans. So,
Yeah. Well,
there's that. But I foresee that being a problem for
yeah.
Bolton. Other than that, there's still going to be the prevalence of Oldhim and Icelander, two traditionally very, very difficult matchups. Not that they're much easier for Dory, but they are nightmarishly hard for Bolton, right?
Yeah.
So I actually think Bolton probably needs to either be changed in a particular way or has to wait for a very particular metagame. Also, if Arachne becomes anywhere near playable, Bolton actually suffers quite a bit because you have all attack actions. You have a lot of yellow cards. Eradicate hits your whole deck
Yeah.
basically. So and you can get fatigued very easily. So that's kind of an issue. Yeah. So that's what Bolton. I think Bolton is kind of a wait and see. Definitely not a week 1 deck. I would not take Bolton to week 1 tournament. I would definitely kind of see what the metagame looks like, see what people are doing, and then build your deck accordingly, right? If for some reason Icelander goes away, I think you probably have a decent shot because you can focus more of your sideboard cards towards the Saber combo. As for Dory, I think Dory is probably in a good position at the moment. Is she S tier? No. Is she A tier? Almost certainly she is. She's got, at least 3-4 new cards from the latest set. And, Dorinthia operates in that kind of exponential power type of position, because once the warrior card pool gets large enough, even top tier players can't predict what you're going to do, because there's just so many possibilities for what you're going to do, right?
That's very
like,
true.
is it this +3? Is it this +3? Is it this go again? Or is it this go again? Or is it that go again? Once they print 2 route effects, you're already, or 2 glint effects, it's going to get kind of nuts.
You're going to see people's heads explode.
Yeah. Eventually, it's going to be really, 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 really tough to deal with Dorinthia. And by then, she'll LL, and then it won't be a problem anymore.
Yeah,
but there will be a small period of time when they're like, oh my goodness, her card pool is so large now. How do I defend against this?
Yep.
And then she'll take advantage of that. The metagame also seems fairly favorable for Dorinthia. There's not a huge prevalence of defense reactions at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
People are not running unmovable in their deck because of Starvo. That was another reason why Hatch's Dorinthia was actually a good play back then, is because they'd bring in Unmovable against your Dorinthia deck, and you're like, psych, I'm attacking you for 2, not 10.
Yeah.
So, so that's the metagame is fairly favorable for Dorinthia. If I was to go to a ProQuest for season 1 of 2022, 2023. Jeez, time flies.
Yeah.
I'd probably be bringing Dorinthia at the moment.
All right. Well, hey, you heard it here first, folks. Dory, ProQuest season 3. It's going to be
for week 1.
The
for week
business.
2, we'll see.
Yeah, maybe it's Bolton. We'll see. Now, we have some listener questions. We answered a lot of this, but I do want to give a shout out to the folks that asked. And these all come from the Buds Discord, which is
sure,
open to everyone, and these are all some great buds. Armor X10 did ask, do you think Battle Axe Story will ever be a thing, or will a new warrior come out to support the Battle Axe? We answered that.
Well, I think there could be both. You think about it, like Dorinthia, star of the show, could be a Battle Axe wielding hero. I also think the axe archetype is not so dependent on the cards; it's dependent on the hero. So it'll be very, very obvious when Merciless Battle Axe is a thing, and that will come from a new hero. Whether it's the new hero in March, there's a new set coming out in March. In the pits, I don't know. In the pits, we're probably just going to get a ranger, maybe a mech. I mean, if we look at the adult heroes, Brute has 2, Guardian has 2, Warrior has 2. So it could be the only adult hero class that only has 1 is mech. So we're almost guaranteed to get an adult mech hero in the next set. That's where Azalea lives, so maybe we'll get Azalea, star of the show. Who knows? And yeah, so we'll see. There's probably another illusionist somewhere down the line, so that's another thing. We might see another assassin class. Actually, that's actually the most obvious one. Is we're going to see another assassin class in the pits. So they definitely could include a warrior from the pits.
Yeah,
I guess. I mean, Battle Axe might be a little unwieldy for that area, but we'll see. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like you said, and obviously, you said a lot of these heroes have 2. Obviously, mech is due, right? But Warrior and Brute have not had new heroes since Monarch.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, and I would like to see it. Capolo asked about the Quicksilver Dagger Dorinthia deck, which we kind of went over. Is it true that the deck, as someone called it, is just a worse Bolton deck? Do you have any comments on that?
I mean, the ability of the Bolton deck is to execute a turn that does like 30 damage to them, right? The Quicksilver Centauri Saber style deck again, the fundamental, it's just a numbers thing. Like,
Yeah.
if the dagger for some reason attacked for 2,
Maybe.
we'd be in business, right? If there was a saber that attacked for 3, actually, now that I think about it, there's another design resource that they could use. It's like a reverse saber. Is it attacks for 3? If it's blocked by an attack action, it blocks for 2. Something like that might have been. I don't know how to do that, but like there had to, the weapon needed to attack for a little bit more, and that comes down to the whole design thing that I talked about. Like, they wanted the weapon to attack for 1.5, but they can't make the Quicksilver dagger attack for 1.5, so it attacks for 1.
Yep.
And that's basically the problem. Yep.
And the follow up to that, Na Willie asks, which direction should the dagger and saber be facing? Now, I will answer that I keep my dagger pointing left and my saber pointing left, my dagger pointing right. How do you do it?
Okay, so first of all, you put your hero card in the middle slot. I know there's some savages that play with their hero card on the right and then their weapons on the middle and left slot. I love you, but don't do that, right? Unless you're trying to annoy your opponent, in which I say, like, okay, go for it, right? If you're running, like, I know some people, they'll run like a white bordered left facing saber, and then they'll run a rainbow foil black bordered saber facing left, just to annoy their opponent, right? And I think that's amazing, but I'd never do that because it would annoy myself more. But
yeah.
All right. So generally the combat chain goes left to right. What are you going to attack with first? You're going to attack with the saber first. So the left side should be your saber. That should be pointing left.
Yep.
Your hero's in the middle. Your Quicksilver dagger is on the right. You swing at the right saber. Right Quicksilver dagger, right?
Yep.
So left facing saber, right facing Quicksilver dagger. That's the only way to do it. Black border.
I agree.
Either both rainbow foil or both cold foil or both normal.
Yep.
Any other combination is go to the Savage Lands.
Death Nor asks, which existing talent would you most like to see on a warrior, and which would you hate to see?
Ooh, let's see here. So there are Light Shadow. I don't know how Shadow Warrior would work, but that just sounds like a rune blade to me, so no thank you. And also Bolton would hate that hero, no matter what it is. Let's see, what other talents we got? We got Ice, Earth, Lightning, and then we have Draconic. Draconic Warrior, I already kind of see Fi as that, even though Fi is a ninja. He has a ton of armor. He kind of looks like a warrior, so I'm like, okay, Fi's the ninja warrior. Fine. Okay.
Yeah.
So it has to be from the existing talents of Ice, Earth, or Lightning. Of those, Earth Warrior just sounds like Guardian.
Yeah, I guess so.
Ice Warrior, conceptually, all right. I'm down for Ice Warrior or Lightning Warrior. Both sound
cool.
Both sound cool. Yeah. I'd be down for that. Yeah, either one of those would be cool. If I had to pick one, I'd probably lean towards the Lightning side, since Ice has a bad rap. I don't want more Ice heroes in the game.
We don't need them for now.
We're good. Like, it's always good to have a few, but
yeah,
we don't want too many of them, right? We want some diversity.
Not.
And Lexi's not so popular, and Briar's not running that many Lightning cards, so it'd be cool.
Yeah. James Canizolka, aka Jim, friend of mine. What does Josh think? That's you. Bolton needs to make him A tier. What would make him S tier?
If the cards charged how I said they would, that would be very, very good. There has to be a very good payoff for charging cards into your soul. Celestial Cataclysm and Beacon of Victory are fine, but they're not amazing. That is kind of the issue. Another card similar to something kind of like Exude Confidence that you can dump things into at reaction speed to pump it might be good. So let's say I attack with Bolt of Light or whatever.
Yeah.
It attacks for 4. I can banish cards from my soul to give it more power. Well,
Yeah.
not only can I banish a card, give it more power that turns on my hero ability, kind of like why E-Strike is a good card in Bolton, because E-Strike 7, banish a card, give it go again, right?
Yep.
Something like that would be good. Some sort of like exude confidence effect that says you can banish cards to pump it. Or the easiest way to do this is give an equipment that says, if you've charged this turn, you can pay a resource, draw a card. Something like that. Get your card back at a cost of a resource. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Maybe a chess piece, maybe a headpiece, I don't know. But also a specific boots for Bolton would be nice as well. Equipment is actually the biggest thing that, if you look at the equipment, Valiant Dynamos is not for Bolton. That was printed in Monarch. Vestige of Soul is not for Bolton. That's for Prism.
God.
Library of Solana is not for Bolton. That is for Prism, right?
Believe me, I can go on and on about Vestiges of
The
Soul.
only equipment piece he got, not even the axes were for him. That was for draft. The only piece that he got was the Halo of Illumination.
Yeah.
Good card. But yeah. I think the easiest way to solve Bolton is give him powerful equipment, or give him cards that say, on when this is charged into your soul, have some effect. It'd also be nice for him to have an attack reaction that charged, so you could charge at instant speed.
Yeah. Hey, that's gonna.
You do 2 of those, he'll be A. You do all of them, he'll be S.
Yeah, there you go. And Flake asked when he's getting his Lumina Go Boomina shirt from you.
That will be very, very soon. I know that the guys at the Card Guys have already printed the shirt, but they never give it to me. I was supposed to wear it at the World Championship, but they forgot to bring it. So there's that. But yeah, they're working on their whole website called Card Culture, I believe, and that should be up within the next month or so. They said it's really, really ready to launch. And yeah, I should go. I'm going to go, after this is done recording, I'm going to go remind them to send me this. I want it. Like they got an artist to like draw the Lumina Ascension. Like you can't obviously just print the same one, right? So they got an artist to draw the Lumina Ascension in a cool art style, and then they printed it. So
I can't wait to see it.
I'm
definitely interested too.
Yep. There you go. That'll be available very, very soon. So
well, Josh, thank you so much for coming on. This was a blast. Just talking Warrior with you and just talking to you. It was a lot of fun, and I appreciate it. And I'm sure all the listeners did as well. Please, could you plug anything you'd like to plug?
Sure. Well, I'm part of the Card Guys, and the Card Guys have a YouTube channel. If you guys are interested in Flesh and Blood in general, you're going to love all the content there. In particular, I have a series called Fab 201. If you want to take your game to the next level, check that out. There's also the Fab Team Cup, which is kind of like the World Cup equivalent of Fab that's been going on. We have all of our matches there for you to enjoy. There's a Dorinthia versus Oldhim game. So a lot of people I know have been struggling with that matchup. Go watch that. And there's I think next week should be Dorinthia versus Reinhardt. That should be up very, very soon. So if you enjoy, if you want to watch me play, that's where to go. Good commentary by my teammates as well. We also have a Discord. The Card Guys have a Discord where it's free to join. We hang out, we chit chat, we play games there. Great place. There's also a Patreon. You join the Patreon, you get access to our deck list and Patreon section of our Discord. And there's a bunch of other bonuses, like you can submit your deck to have one of our specialists look at it. I've looked at many people's different deck lists for Warrior, and I've told them how they can improve. So that's a good resource there. Finally, you can find me on Twitter at Josh_TCGZ. Yeah, I don't
Awesome.
post too often, but when I do post, it's generally, relevant to the Warriors or to the game. Sometimes I post memes there as well, so
Well,
Yep.
we all love memes, and please, everybody, go check all that stuff out. I'll
Mhm.
have all the information for that in the show notes as well, and you can continue to find me on Twitter at freshbudspod. You can, if you're listening on the YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. I'm gonna do a whole Leviah cosplay.
Ooh.
If we get 500 subscribers, which is something I announced on Twitter, and I
Uh-huh.
keep forgetting to remind people, and well, maybe it's on purpose. It's a lot of work, but join the Buzz Discord. If you're listening, Spotify, all that kind of stuff. If you rate, leave a review, that's awesome. It helps visibility. And yeah. And Josh, I always like to end the show talking a little bit about food because I think it's a great unifier. Can you
Aha.
please tell me a little bit about some food that you're enjoying right now, or maybe just a meal
Okay.
you love?
So basically, I'm gonna get my kitchen renovated pretty soon. And so what does that mean? That means I have no access to my stove, and like I'm not gonna microwave food. I don't want to eat that. I don't want to eat canned food, whatever, right? So I was like thinking like, if I lose out on my kitchen, what do I do? Right? I was like, well, I think I just have to buy a grill and then grill my food instead. So that's what I've been looking into. I've been experimenting with some ribs. I had some ribs
Ooh.
for lunch. So
Oh.
basically, on the journey to becoming a middle-aged normie male pitmaster. Uh, so that's kind of what I'm gonna do. I try to learn how to use my grill properly and all that. So
Well,
yeah,
I can see it now. Josh Lau, Bolton extraordinaire and grill master.
yeah.
I
There
love
you
it.
go.
But yeah, thank you everybody so much for listening, and I hope you all have a great week.